Hello, people out there on the YouTube, people out there in the podcast land. It is myself, my name, Jason T. Lewis. I am here. This is the Painfully Honest Tech podcast. Thank you so much for joining me back again. This time, flying solo. I ain't got Zach with me. He's feeling under the weather. So I figured I would just go ahead and take care of this thing myself. How's everybody doing out there? We got Genosis in the chat. We've got Tech for Your Needs. We've got Flora and Chad V and Cinderblock and Live Vlog. Chanceral. Edwin Custo. Tech Rant Live, of course. Sneed Mobile Tech, good to see you in the house. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm looking crispy. This is Studio B, as it were. It's 14 or 15 degrees here in Iowa, and despite the best efforts of a space heater of gigantic proportions, it cannot keep Studio A warm enough. So I'm just going to be here, because as much as I don't know. How do you like the new set? Give me a thumbs up if you think it's okay, or say boo if you don't think it's. Oh, jeez, there's all kinds of noise there. Sorry about that, folks. My wife seems to want to be in touch with me, but she knows that it's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock. I don't think it's like Jurassic Park Site B, Genosis. Hello, meme of the season. How you doing, Willis? Good to see you here. Yeah, it would be, sweetest Coco. It would be nice to head down Caribbean way. Do you see how I cut out the acoustic panel and put my play button in there? Viper, good to see you, my friend. Keith Perry, Madman. It's nice to see all of you out here. So, why is my room different right now? Because it's too cold in the other studio. The other studio is in a garage. I'm working toward getting it sort of closed off to be a room within a room, but at this point I don't have it fully sealed up and everything like that. So over the spring and summer, I'm going to build walls inside the studio, and then I'm going to, have it all closed up, and it'll be like any other room. But right now it's not exactly like a garage, but it's not exactly like a warm room that I'd want to sit in for the number of hours that I sit in doing this stuff. So here I am, 67 in California. That sounds nice. It always sounds nice in California. The LG V30 is not boring. I still want to try out the LG V40, to be honest with you. It's the winter has grabbed hold here in Iowa and won't let go until April, at least. So I see from your last video you spoke to John I have not spoken to John Prosser whatsoever. Not for lack of trying, but I haven't spoken to him. So yeah. So it's raining in Chicago. Well, it's weird. We got snow here. We got 10 inches on yesterday, I think. No, Sunday. I think we got 9 or 10 inches. And it was Sunday. And the towns to the north of us, North Liberty and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, got nothing. They got no snow whatsoever. While a mile away, we got 10 inches. It's very crazy. I've never seen anything like it. But then again, it's the Midwest. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes and it'll change. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody says that about wherever they live. Am I right? Yeah. I heard it's chilly on the northeast side. Weather doesn't happen until it happens to the northeast, specifically New York City. I've learned that over the years. Thank you, Genosis. Thank you I'm glad you're enjoying the new studio. Let's see. So, in lieu of having any idea what I wanted to do today, because usually, even if there's not something, Zach and I can come up with something to talk about. I believe it's freezing in Wisconsin. The LG Mauricio, yes, the LG UI is not good. I wish they would just abandon it for something light or even just stock Android. The phones themselves are really great, and the audio quality, the video quality, always great. I see what you're saying, Willis. Yeah, Zach told me that he did that. I'd love to have John swing by sometime. It's been a while since we've talked, and so he's welcome anytime. Yeah. Let's see. Always use custom ROMs. Once Android got better, I just got too lazy to like root and all that stuff. The closest I would come to a custom ROM is using some sort of launcher. Zach Richard is not going to be around this evening. He has caught whatever his children brought home from school last week, and so he's under the weather. He's under the weather. He might be under a lot of things. Yeah, I like Clint K. I like watching discussions between myself and John as well. So, yeah. So Viper, I got this very mug right here. There's like a street fair every year in my town. I think Arts Fest or Jazz Fest. We have two, Arts Fest and Jazz Fest. I can't remember which one, but this guy comes. He makes his own root beer. And he sells these mugs. He sells the mugs for like $15, and then you can refill the mug with root beer or whatever you want for as long as you're at the venue. I think he's making a killing. He's making a killing, but that is what it is. That is what it is. I do love this mug though. It holds a lot of juice. I'm not really drinking juice. Which phone is the most boring of 2018? That's a good question. Geez, that's a stumper. Because they're all of a certain standard for the most part. I'm going to say the Pixel. Yeah, I'm going to say the Pixel just because other than the great camera, there's nothing really special about the Pixel. So the red hydrogen phone is certainly not boring. It's also, from what I've heard, not good, but it's not boring. So let's see. No, Zach's not coming, so I don't think Tim Cook's not going to take my invite. So, I don't think he's coming either. Let me see. So what I did was I collected several tweets from folks who tweeted at me when I asked for topics. And I basically took them all in, and I'm going to use my Elgato Stream Deck for the first time in like any kind of actual useful way. Palm Mini phone, I don't count that. Hey, Jeff, what's going on, my friend? Whenever people say phone, in terms of like phone reviewing, I only think about like the bigger hitters, the OnePlus, the Samsung, the LG, the Pixel, all that stuff. Because there are little phones that come out all over the place. I've heard the BlackBerry Key 2 is really great, but it's I can't find one when I go shopping. So, yeah, that's just me. So, what do you guys say? You want to go through these tweets? And so, basically, they're questions that people asked, topics of discussion, and I'll just go and see where it takes us. So, here comes tweet number 1. End of block at Pablo Casiano says, Are we at a design peak when it comes to phones? Should manufacturers focus on software experience instead of the hardware? Hope this helps. Well, that is a great question. End of block. Um, and I think there's a lot of evidence to say that, yes, we are kind of at a standstill when it comes to taking this sort of slab of glass thing and moving any further with it. People have tried, this year was the year where we saw pop-up cameras and all this other stuff, and the ROG phone, I guess, like had a cooler that you could attach to it and all other kinds of stuff. But there's not really anything going on that is pushing the envelope. I think this form factor of phone is just, it's just we're at a stalemate, really. I don't think until we can change the form factor entirely, until it becomes like a translucent sheet of plastic or something like that, I think that phones are just going to be phones. It's I think back to the telephone when we had those kinds of things. The telephone, they made some that looked like bananas. They made some that looked like red race cars. But for the most part, telephones were the same always. Their look didn't really change. Then we got wireless phones, but they all look the same. So I think we've kind of reached that place in the mobile phone market where there's not really a ton else that can be done with this particular form factor. So yeah, I think it would be great to focus on the quality of the user experience. I think that we can do more with some of the things that we have access to. We can be doing more with like smartwatches and that kind of stuff. We could do more. Maybe we can do some more with hologram. There are lots of possibilities for what the software can do, but I can't see the form factor changing until the materials that we have at our disposal to make the phone different change. And that's going to take a while. That's going to take I don't know. I have no idea what it would take to put all those transistors and everything into like a little. I want like a wristband that can pop up holograms, and like I can talk to people that way, or something. That would be fun. But I don't think it would be good to play games on. I don't play games on my phone, so I wouldn't mind. Yeah. Who's got a typo? Oh yeah, 8K phone. On a screen anywhere close to this size, you can't even really see 4K. 1440, maybe it looks a little crispier. But I don't know. I just don't think that a phone like a 6-inch screen or anywhere above or slightly below that, I don't think you can see like 1440p in those things. I don't think you can see 4K. There are a lot of videos out there on YouTube that talk about like what resolution our eyeballs actually see in. So I haven't watched them. I've been interested in watching them. And haven't done it yet, but maybe somebody out there in the chat knows what resolution our eyeballs actually see in, because I'm not sure. I would love to see Apple really polish off iOS and bring some of the stuff that they haven't, like bring AR more into the everyday and that kind of thing. I think software is where the growth is going to happen. So yeah, that's the way I feel about it. Look at tweet number 2. Okay, the state of the smartphone market in general, perhaps. I know you did a video focusing on Apple recently, but it can't hurt to look at the industry as a whole. Maybe video games too, or Jason learns to play a new song. Well, I'm starting a live stream channel for music. That much is true. I have the Twitch channel already. I have artwork for it. I'm trying to get the audio set up as I want it to be before I go live. But I hope to do like one sort of show, like hour-long show every week. Maybe you guys will come over and join me. So that's what I'm going to do with the live stuff. But the state of the smartphone market in general. Uh, the whole industry. Good question. Um, the thing about where the smartphone market is right now is, I think the problem that Apple's having right now with flagging sales is indicative of where the smartphone market is right now. Some people might be younger and not really remember the evolution through flip phones all the way up to the first smartphones to where we are now and the in between. But my first phone was like a some kind of flip phone or Palm Trio, I think, or something like that. I can't quite remember. It was cheap. It was cheap. It might have been one of those Nokia cheap phones. But yeah, and then I got a Samsung flip phone that had the ability to like look at messages on the flippy part, like outside on a screen, and also it had play, pause, and fast forward buttons. I had that. I think after that I went to my first smartphone, the Samsung Captivate, which was one of the first Android phones that was out there. It was basically the Galaxy 1, but every carrier had a different name for it, and I was with AT&T at the time, so it was the Galaxy Captivate, the Samsung Galaxy Captivate. And one thing that people don't really recall all that much is that Android phones, when they first came out, the reason people got into rooting phones, the reason people got into doing all kinds of different stuff like that is the Android experience was not good. All the way up, I feel like all the way up through an Android KitKat. The smartphone stuff wasn't, the Android stuff just wasn't good. There were so many problems with it that you really like dug in there and worked with the phone and rooted it and did all those kinds of things just to get some kind of a decent experience. And it was fun to do, but it wasn't exactly the most reliable phone experience. iPhones came out, and by and large they were pretty stable. And so that was the big deal. Oh, hey Zach, super chatting on the day off. Hey, how you doing? I don't think the soup would keep until it got all the way up there through customs and stuff. Hope you're feeling better, my friend. We miss you. We all do. Everybody says so. Yeah, but when I remember the Galaxy Note 1 was the first time I felt like smartphones were, well, the Dynatac, yeah. What about the Motorola Razr? The Razr. That was like the hip phone back in the day, the Razr. I remember my mom had a Razr, but it was after it was cool. So, yeah, I think she had that Razr up until like she got an iPhone 7 or something. Uh, so when Android started to become more reliable and iOS and Android were somewhat on par with one another, that's when the real competition started. But Android was basically like several beta versions of Android on consumer phones for many, many years. And then they started they had iterated enough to get the operating system working. iOS has always been up. I think the one reason that iOS is as closed down as people like to talk about is that iOS, I think they saw limitations and they decided to try and make the limitations that they saw somewhat work for them, as opposed to take the limitations and try and outdo or outwork the limitations. So the icons and the apps and all that stuff in a grid, working in a particular way. I think all of that was somewhat by design, given what they had to work with, and then the ecosystem of the iPhone and the iOS ecosystem developed to the point where you have to remember, like, there was a time when if you wanted real apps, quote unquote, you had to go with an iPhone. The apps that were on Android were, if they were ported apps, they were terrible. Usually like 50% as good as the app that existed for the iPhone. And the App Store on Android was just the Wild West. Like, you could get anything, but it might kill your phone. You could sideload stuff, you could do whatever. So I think once that ecosystem of apps sort of built itself up, Apple was sort of cemented into the way that operating system was going to work, and they made it work for them. And it made it a better experience for a long time than Android. Now everything's on par for the most part. I mean, Android offers still more flexibility while iOS is still doing the thing that it's always done. But the experience between the two, there's, not nearly as bad a user experience with Android as there was even 3 or 4 years ago. I really want to say, like, the Note 5 was where it all began to sort of work somewhat reliably and do its own thing. So now we've iterated to the point where there's no place left to go. Honestly, we just have phones. We just have phones, and there's no place left to go until another big shift in form factor. So I don't know if that's going to be like your phone is drilled into your ear bones or implanted into your head or whatever. I would be down for any of those things. I want implanted stuff. I want headphones implanted in my ears with access to, like, networked hard drives and stuff of music. Or I guess now it's all this streaming service stuff, which I still hate. But anyway, I saw some questions back here. Genosis says it's gotten easier and you don't need to jailbreak iOS anymore. Yeah, same thing. And you don't need to root Android phones anymore. So yeah, I think it's gotten a lot better. And those of us who remember the good old days when you weren't really sure if your phone was going to allow you to answer a phone call if you were like on a Samsung Captivate, or if it was going to just freeze and die. I'm not going to play the guitar right now, YouTube Ed. I want to talk about these things that people have asked about. Let's move on to the next tweet. Oh, Miyobi asks, console versus PC gaming, the painfully honest truth. That might be a topic for a whole video, to tell you the truth. I'm not looking at how many people are in the stream tonight. I don't have the window open because it, like, white windows then reflect off my glasses. But that's cool. Welcome everyone who is here. I'm so glad you're here. We are having a lot of fun answering these questions that people are asking. Console versus PC gaming, the painfully honest truth. Well, I started out as a console gamer. And by console, I mean Atari 2600. I did have at least one friend, I can't remember, who had the Pong machine where you just, like, sort of twisted the wheel and back and forth. But yeah, I got an Atari 2600. God, it was probably 1983 or 82. I would have been 11 or 12 years old. And I played the bejesus out of that thing. I remember playing the Raiders of the Lost Ark game and and always being killed by the snakes. I remember trying to play the ET game, but it didn't really. It was very much too weird. And when the ET game came out and flopped so hard, there's a great documentary that I'm not remembering the name of right now, but it used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, about the Atari ET game and how they were consoles were, the Atari console in particular was on the verge of moving into the mainstream and really kind of having a stranglehold on the market. And then they had this game that they rushed out for the Christmas season, and it was terrible, and everybody just and it literally killed the gaming industry for like 10 years before it really got back up to speed. I remember things like in television. I remember things like Sega Genesis and early stuff like that. But I feel like it didn't really get back up to speed until, for me, PlayStation 1. And I didn't play a ton. There was a time when I was young, like when I was in my 20s, that I didn't play a ton of video games, but I played like Resident Evil all the way through. I think as many of those as I could get my hands on. And ColecoVision. I remember the ColecoVision, and I also remember the Commodore 64, which was kind of a computer. My one of my good friends had a Commodore 64, and that was like the expensive one. The N64 is one that I knew about, but I didn't have. My brother had a Nintendo console. I never had a Nintendo console. We got the Wii several years back when my daughter was really young. Amiga, I remember the Amigas as well. That's right. So for me, console gaming sort of came first. Back in the old days, if you wanted to build a PC, you actually had to know what you were doing. And I most definitely did not. And, my family wasn't like a big technology family. We watched TV and that was about it. That, as far as technology goes, that was about all we did. So I didn't really get into PC gaming until I was in college, and I had friends who built their own PCs, and they were playing like Doom and Quake and things like that. But I remember the first time I watched somebody play Quake, everything was moving so fast that I felt sick to my stomach. I was just like, I can't believe that you can even see anything that's happening here. Oh my God. It totally blew me away. But the attainability of computers in that way just wasn't quite there for me at the time. I mean, the first computer that I had available to me was a Macintosh Classic 2, I believe it was. It was like the little beige box with a tiny screen in it. And my then girlfriend, now wife, her parents had bought one, and they let her use it for school that year, and so it lived in my apartment, and I got to write papers and do stuff on it. But there wasn't a ton of stuff that you could do with that computer. So as time went on, we moved to New York and those kinds of things. I still would play console games every once in a while, but never really got deep into the PC gaming until recently. It's so... Oh, Leisure Suit Larry. Oh, yes. There's a blast from the past. Shannon, good to see you. Shannon. Hey, Brandon, good to see you. This is Tech Today. Miyobi. Quake 3, yeah. I believe it. Like, so many people were so crazy about that game. I mean, I had roommates that would stay up for 48, 72 hours just drinking Jolt Cola and playing those games. I couldn't imagine. Like, I felt like my eyes would melt out of my face because I'd just never seen anything that intense. But yeah, so I got started with building PCs probably about 4 or 5 years ago when my son wanted to get into PC gaming, and I did some looking around at like what we could get for relatively cheap, and looked around for some builds online that we could do, and found a video from our good friend Austin Evans. He had a $300 computer build, and we bought the parts and we put it all together and kind of followed his directions. Like, we go piece by piece through the video. And it worked. and it worked. I think I still have that computer in storage somewhere. Easy can be easy. It's good to see you, my friend. Modern day family man, good to see you. Yeah, so we built him that computer, and that kind of gave me the bug. So I built myself a computer. Then a couple of Christmases later, we built a computer for my daughter, for myself, and for my son. And I always have the best intentions to play games. Like, I want to play games. I want to stream games. I think it would be really fun. But when I'm on my computer, I find it really hard to move away from like productivity-based stuff to games. That's the hardest thing for me. So this is a long-winded way of answering Miyobi's question. For me, like console games for sure, I'm not much of a mouse and keyboard warrior. And like Battlefield 5 just came out, so I've been playing that a little bit with my friend, my friend Curtis and I. Like we've been friends since 1989. We met as voice majors in in school when we first went to college at West Virginia. And it was one of those weird situations where I was a punk rock kid, he was a punk rock kid, he was new to town, I had grown up in town, and we went to the first like meeting of all the new music majors, and I just looked around. I was like, none of these people are like me at all, and so I sat in the back of the bleachers, and then I saw this kid come in, and he was like long hair and all like ratty, and he came up and sat down with me, and he was like, "Hey man, do you skate?" I didn't skate, but it was part of the culture. So we became really good friends very quickly, and we still play console Battlefield games. We've played some other stuff too. Played Battlefield 4. I want to say we played like 600 hours. Well, I played like 600 hours of Battlefield 4, and Curtis played like 3 or more times that amount. He is the kind of guy who can sit down and play a game and just be totally focused on playing that game, like forget to eat kind of thing. Hector, thank you for the super chat. I have a question. Could you describe to us your perfect ideal phone if you could switch parts between Apple and Android, Samsung, Huawei, LG, etc.? That's a good question. I mean, I think Android and iOS, I think Apple has started to build really good hardware that's working really well with the software. I guess I would have to say that if you could give me an iPhone of the current generation with a headphone jack and a high quality DAC inside, and maybe the ability to use widgets in a way that's not like how we use widgets these days in iOS. I really like to be able to just like open up my phone and have my calendar and the clock and stuff there when I'm using Android. I miss it when I go over to the Android or the iOS phones again. Yeah, dark mode in the Notes app is key. I'm running Mojave on this right now, this computer, this iMac Pro, and Notes has a dark mode in it right now. But if you use it on iOS, and I guess that's one thing I want for it, I want dark mode in iOS. I want it so bad I can't even tell you, because especially like I don't always find myself in super well lit rooms other than when I'm sitting in front of a camera and I'm doing this. And it really bothers my eyes. Like white screens really bother my eyes. And so I would love dark mode in iOS. I hope it's coming soon. But that's the whole thing. I really, really miss the headphone jack. And I know everybody's moving to Bluetooth. Bluetooth has its place. But to say that it's Bluetooth should be used exclusively to the detriment of having a headphone jack is ridiculous. I want my headphone jack back. I want a DAC in there that makes everything sound really good. these are all things that, like, it's the 21st century. We could we could have these things, and LG does have them. I mean, the headphone jack in the Samsung phones is not terrible, but the headphone jack with the quad DAC that LG puts in, like, there's no better sounding phone out there in terms of audio reproduction. In order to get anywhere close, you have to start buying some specialty gear to listen to your music. So I want a headphone jack back. I want a headphone jack back. Is that a good answer to your question? I think it is. Why are you singing stuff from The Sound of Music there, Shannon? LG V40 on iOS. Yeah, that's about the shape of it. If I could have that phone running iOS, I would be happy. I would be happy. I review, no problem, man. I hope you're liking the 10R. I'm still enjoying it. The one thing that's bothering me about the 10R isn't the 10R's fault. The YouTube Creator app, the Creator Studio app, or whatever they call it, is very laggy and jerky. And it really bothers me as I try and scroll through comments. It's just like, it bothers me a lot. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So headphone jacks and dark mode notepad are a few of my favorite things. There's no shame in keeping the 10s Max. I mean, I liked both of the phones. I just happened to feel like the 10R fit better in my hand, was more comfortable. So I decided to keep that one. But yeah, there's no reason to not enjoy the 10s Max for sure, except for maybe the hole that it puts in your pocket. But, as Apple is discovering, not too many people are very fond of that kind of hole. I mean, who knows what we're going to see with Apple? Honestly, and I mean, I'm sure nobody really paid attention when I said it, but I did say we don't know what the end of this year is going to be. We don't know what the end sales numbers are going to be. Apple's not going to tell us the sales numbers because they said they weren't going to anymore. But the iPhones could come out and do fine. They could, at the end of the day, everything could be fine. But I've just never really seen the flagship models like not meet initial expectations. Like, basically Samsung holding Apple to the contract that they made for X number of screens, and Apple having to start producing an old phone just to meet that initial order is kind of new territory for Apple as far as I know. I review, thank you, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate the sentiment. So yeah, let's go on to tweet number 4 now. Jamie asked, where would Apple be today if Steve Jobs were still alive? Was still alive, yes. Where would we be today if Steve Jobs was still alive? That, Jamie, is a very good question. I know it feels kind of cliche to be like, oh, well, if Steve Jobs were here, none of this would have happened. But I think it's honestly true. I think it's honestly true. Now, Steve Jobs might have had a blind spot about stuff like, not wanting to create giant phones. But the thing that made the iPhone special back in the day when Steve Jobs was still with us was that there was one iPhone. There was, the new model was the one iPhone. And he did that with everything. That all the Apple products were just like a single thing. So you go get the thing, and that's the thing. Now, the iPhone product line is split, so it's like totally schizophrenic. Apple's just offering so many things that people are like option anxiety. And the thing is, if they wanted to make like last year, they should have just made the 10. That's what I feel. They should have just said, okay, rip the Band-Aid off, going this way, and be done with it. But they didn't. They sold all the way down to the SE. So they had the 8, 8 plus, 7, 7 plus, 6S, 6X plus, SE. And people had all these choices. I don't think Steve Jobs would allow that to happen. I don't think Steve Jobs would allow them to have like a big and a little phone. If they want big phones, Steve Jobs would say big phone. I just think that he and that's number one. I think he would have made the product lines be much more coherent. Right now, the Apple product lines are not coherent whatsoever. Number two, I think that there would still be more of a sense that Apple was a company that was focused on people and their experience with their products as opposed to what it is now. I mean, Apple still creates great experiences with their products, but it's not like in their DNA the same way it was when Steve Jobs was with us. So I think that his focus, he would do things, go way too far, take way too long, dig way too deep to make something exactly what he thought it needed to be. And he wouldn't take anything other than that as the outcome. So people have said this, like, oh, what would Steve Jobs say if he saw the notch? I think if Steve Jobs saw the notch, he would lose his mind and everybody who was on that design team would be fired. And he would say, we're not going with this technology. We're not going with this until we learn how to make it seamlessly built into our phone so we don't have this stupid unibrow thing going on. So that's number two. And number three, well, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I feel like Apple would still be a smaller company. Apple would not be the, giant, like, well, what is it, 840 million company instead of 1 trillion, or 840 billion, I guess it is. It wouldn't be that kind of company. It would still be making choices that allowed it to grow, but not just unfettered growth that, any kind of unfettered growth, becomes a kind of cancer. And I think Apple has just been sort of growing and metastasizing all over the place, doing this, doing that, the HomePod, the whatever, iPods are still kind of available, blah, 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 blah. And I just don't think that Steve Jobs would have allowed the company to go in those directions. It would either be, we have a solid thought process about how this is going to happen, and we're going to move forward. Like, I think he would have loved the idea of the HomePod, but it would have had to have been like much more integrated into the ecosystem than it is. The HomePod sounds great. The pricing of the HomePod is absolutely unbelievably ridiculous. Like, it went on sale for $250 on Black Friday. $250 is still too much for the HomePod when you can get a Sonos One for $199 or a Sonos Play One for $149. If Steve Jobs died sooner, I don't know. I mean, are you talking like before he came back, or like, so he got fired and then he came back and then he and Johnny Ive built the iMac? The iMac is really the thing that put Apple back on the right direction. And the iMac was just a human kind of computer when everything else was just like these really ugly boxes. And if he never came back, Apple would have gone bankrupt. I mean, John Sculley was driving that company into the ground. He had no idea what he was doing. And at the end of the day, John Sculley, he wanted to take the Microsoft model. I don't know if people remember this now, but John Sculley started licensing Mac OS or Macintosh, whatever they call it back then, OS 9. He licensed it to third-party manufacturers, and so you could buy a Mac that wasn't made by Apple, which was crazy. And it didn't work out very well. And John Sculley got fired, and Steve came back, and the rest is history. But if he never came back, Apple would have gone out of business. They would have been a footnote in the history of computer technology, and they just would have, that's it, tits up, as they say. Which is too bad, because they've done some really good things in the time since Steve Jobs came back and up to now. I mean, there's still, to my mind, hope for Apple. I think that they really need to look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why. I mean, Tim Cook is a supply side guy. He can source parts. He can get systems together to make things, but he has no idea, it seems, about the art that goes along with it, the art that was part of what Steve Jobs demanded. And right now, I don't think Tim Cook is a bad guy. I don't think he's doing a bad job. I don't anything like that. I just think that Apple has lost its way. And now so many of their products are not as good as they used to be, and that is not something that I really ever thought I would see. I mean, this iMac Pro is a fantastic machine, worth every dollar that I spent on it. But an iMac, like the several iMacs that I tried before this, had problems. And same thing with the MacBook Pros. Every single one that I had problems. This keyboard issue, the overheating issue, all of these things. Like, I'm not going to say that like Apple before Steve Jobs died was infallible. You know, we just have to look to the Newton and recognize that Apple was not perfect. Maybe the Newton was an idea before its time. Somebody asked in the chat if I thought that the pencil would be something that Steve Jobs would like. I think that now that the pencil can be used as a creative tool, like he has this, there's that famous thing, who wants a stylus, you lose it, you have to put it away, blah, blah, blah. But I think if he saw that the pencil could help visual artists, the pencil could work in all these different ways, then he would be on board with the pencil. Because none of those things were possible back in the days of like capacitive screens and all that kind of stuff. Terrell, yes, Apple products are overpriced. Apple's kind of backed themselves into a corner where they've always been expensive. Now they've been like incrementally raising their prices, but the prices have now gotten to this place that for the majority of people, it's just like, wow, that is a lot of money. Like $2,900 for a well-spec'd MacBook is crazy. Some might say that $5,000 for the iMac Pro is crazy. $1,200 for an iPhone is crazy. And there's going to have to be some sort of course correction. They're going to have to figure out some way to keep the quality where it is and make the products attainable for their customers. I mean, and they need to stop adding insult to injury by not giving people what every other company is giving them when they buy a phone, in terms of fast chargers in the box, if fast charging is possible, etc., etc., all that stuff. If Apple doesn't start doing that now, I think that they'll see their star will start to fade. Because BlackBerry is a perfect example. BlackBerry couldn't adjust when these when these GUI interfaces started to happen, like iOS and Android. BlackBerry tried, but they just couldn't quite get there. So Gamesky says, where it seemed Apple's attitude before was, we don't have competition, it now seems as though the product decisions are based off of competing with everyone. I mean, I don't think they see themselves as competing with everyone, but I think I think that other brands, other products are creating things that Apple maybe would have created at a different time or something like that. I mean, iOS has borrowed plenty from the whole Android ecosystem. They borrowed notifications, they borrowed everything. Yeah. And for that reason, I think that you might be right. You might be right that Apple's being somewhat reactive, but I think the way to get out of that for them is to draw a line in the sand and say, these are the products that we made. These are the products that we make. These are the products that we built our business on. These are the products that our customers expect when we release them. And make the computer line make sense again. Make the iPhone line make sense again. Right now, it's a totally schizophrenic thing. And I don't mean, I shouldn't use that term, but right now they're all over the place. There are so many phones available, and it doesn't make any sense as to which one to buy. So, some people are just seeing like, oh, the iPhone 8 is cheaper and it still has the home button, so I'm going to buy that. LeBaron says Apple has started the process of a death of a million cuts. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the truth of the matter is, people, no company can stay on top forever. No company can stay on top forever. And we don't know who it will be that will step in and take over the mantle from Apple, but it will be someone, some company, some brand, some product, someday. And yes, LeBaron, I think that if Apple started to listen to their customers a little bit more, because the feedback is there, the feedback is there, but Apple has always been a company that says, we know what you don't know what you want. We know what you want, and before you even know that you want it. And that worked for a long time, but at this point, it's kind of not there anymore. So, I would love to see Apple make some changes to how they are running their business. If they go another 2 or 3 years just not seeing the forest for the trees, then we'll see the end of Apple. We will. Sam, thank you. I moved up into a actual heated space in the home. I would love to see a Surface phone, Gamesky. I really would. At this point, I think they could they make a Windows as it exists on the Surface products, Windows as it exists as an operating system. Could they just make a phone that ran Windows and made phone calls? I don't know. They tried the tiles and all that kind of stuff. I thought that design was cool, but it didn't ultimately end up working all that well. But yeah, a Surface phone could be very cool. If they made it with that magnesium, that'd be nice, especially that sort of space black magnesium. I don't really want Windows, but the thing is, Windows is it has its problems. It's very soulless. It has no personality. But it's inoffensive when it's not screwing up all your stuff. And it's done that less and less and less over the years. So, yeah, Sam, the app support was the thing that really killed Windows Phone. But I wonder if the landscape is still the same. I mean, are we still beholden to apps in the way that we were 5 years ago? I mean, of course we use apps, but is it as sort of constrained? Like Apple has the good apps, so you go with Apple. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm a little sniffly right now. Let's look at another tweet. Did I get to this one? Yeah, okay, so we did that one. Now we've got Tech for Your Needs. In this question, talk about how you brand your channel. That's a good question. Honestly, like, it started out as not really. I've worked as an entertainer, trying to get out there and get people to notice what I'm doing. I've worked in marketing and advertising, at different times over the years. And so I think the thing that was always difficult for me is that I just tried so desperately to have the success that I wanted. And it never worked out because it never worked out. I feel like looking back, part of it was that I was so earnestly trying so hard. And the YouTube thing started as just a general, like, well, this is a thing that I can do, so that's cool. So when I started to do it and I started to really develop what I thought the channel was going to be, I mean, the Painfully Honest thing came to me about 2 or 3 years ago. And over time, especially over the last year, it's become really important to me that I keep a strong eye on the painfully honest side. Now, it's been good for me in some ways and bad for me in some ways, because, like with the iPhone 10s, I'm not gonna order an iPhone, then I get a 10s Max, and then I decide to keep it. Blah blah blah. Yeah, I mean that didn't turn out all that well. But yeah, Gamesky and I remember that conversation where we were talking about changing the name, because the channel used to be called the JTL. And I just had a sense that something related to what I do. So the branding, you always want to have a name that tells people what they're going to expect, right? So For the Love of Tech, and all those kind of, get names like that are obviously, you're going to get something tech related. I think the branding sort of brainstorm that I had with Painfully Honest Tech was that it not only told you what you were going to be experiencing on the channel, but how you were going to be experiencing it. That's been hard to sort of keep on track and keep focused on and do it all the time. But I feel like, yeah, there's definitely a brand identity that I've built over time, and that it's that if nothing else, you're gonna hear what I honestly think. It could be a complete reversal of what I thought before. It could be more of the same, but you're always gonna get that painfully honest opinion from me, and that's gonna be the what's out front with the brand. I mean, obviously, I'm not a young guy, so I can't sort of, I can't use my youth or my looks or anything like that to build my brand. I've always been kind of a straight shooter kind of guy, so that's what my brand is at this point. I've always been somebody who was really willing to share personal stuff publicly, and the painfully honest tech stuff is kind of the same way. So that is the kind of the brand identity that I've built for myself, or that I hope I'm building for myself. And Richard, you're right. Like, it seems like a lot longer period of time than what it has been. But June, July of last year, I had around 5,000 subscribers, and now I'm over 125, almost 126,000. And to grow that quickly in that short a period of time, it's only a shorter period of time when you look at, like, I'm day to day and then week to week and then month to month trying to figure out what I'm doing on the channel and how I'm going to work from one place to the next. And I have a strategy and a thought process about what that's going to be, but it's so micro compared to big swaths of time like that. So when I step back and take the time to look at when I step back and take the time to look at where the channel has gone and come to, it really is kind of crazy. I mean, I'm having the kind of success and the kind of experience with YouTube that I had always really so desperately wanted before, but perhaps the desperation was I was just taking it too seriously. And I definitely take YouTube seriously. I take personal affronts on YouTube seriously. I take a lot of stuff. I take a lot of stuff seriously. But that's part of the nature of what I do. So I'm just trying to read some comments here. Ellis says the reason I like PHT is your voice is soothing. Oh, thank you. It could rival Michael Fisher's. Like, I just can't listen to a review and no need for B-rolls. That's nice of you to say. I'm glad. I mean, it's I've never thought that I had a great voice for talking. I've always been a good singer, and a lot of my personal identity was wrapped up in that for a very long time. But thank you, Ellis. I really appreciate that. Gameski, you can always be like some people and speak completely out of your hiney hole and call people idiots and point fingers everywhere until you are wrong. That is one way to do it. Yes. But yeah, so reading more comments. Deep soothing voice. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to sing tonight. Soon. Tech Free Needs. Welcome back. All right, let's reveal the final tweet. Hector Brybieska, Gadget Beard, who has a great beard. Why are YouTubers acting like they are tech analysts these days? Okay, that is a good question, one worthy of answering. There's been an evolution in how people look at technology YouTube channels. It used to be that you got a product, you showed people the product, you talked about the product, you read the specs of the product. Some people were very good about giving a good overview of their experience with the product. But it was all basically one-off product-based type stuff. And people made big-time careers off of that. For me, I'm more interested in the story, right? I'm more interested in the whole history of how something's happened, and I'm more interested in the whole idea that none of these products exist in a bubble. And it's really hard to grow a channel when you're basically starting from zero every single time. You get a new product, you talk about the product. Then it's a new product, and you talk about the product. So what I feel is really important is getting into the narrative of what does the product mean? What does the market experience that the product is having mean? How do we contextualize this stuff? So I am much more interested in talking about those things, and it gives me more of an opportunity for a lot of different kinds of content than I would have had before. So I don't know if I know there are people out there who are calling themselves tech analysts and that kind of thing. I'm an opinionated guy on the internet who talks about the stuff that I like to talk about. I would not call myself a tech analyst at all. I just have an interest in tech, and I would probably talk to people at work the same way that I talk to you guys about tech. I've always geeked out on stuff that I've been really passionate about, whether it's records or music or tech or anything else. And so that's what I do on YouTube. I am analyzing and sort of forming an opinion and maybe doing a little bit of editorial work, but I'm still just an opinionated guy on the internet who thinks enough of himself to get in front of a microphone, to get in front of a camera and talk about this stuff. You know, people can listen or not. and I've been very fortunate to this point that people have wanted to listen. People have wanted to watch my videos. People seem to get something out of it. I get something out of it for sure, creating this stuff. So I don't think that it's, at least for my part, it's not me trying to put on the airs of being someone who knows everything about this, that, or the other thing. And you know, I think the whole idea of being right before having a conversation, I think I don't try to be right. I just try to be evocative of thought and conversation. And so that's what I do. Other people might be doing it differently, and that's fine too. So that is an hour's worth of me talking about stuff. I guess that's what we're going to call the podcast for tonight. I'm gonna roll this out, and then I'll do more questions here as we roll out. If you want to join us out there in podcast land, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Central Time, we do this live. Every single week, you can come and be a part of the studio audience. Ask questions, throw insults, whatever you feel like doing, you can do it. But this has been the Painfully Honest Tech podcast for the week of, God, I don't even know what day it is. So this is what, November 26th, 27th, I think. I don't know. Anyway, it's the week after Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This has been the Painfully Honest Tech Podcast. Tech podcast so honest, it hurts like your ears and stuff. Until the next time, I'm out. And now it's just us. We can talk. So, I'm not done for the night. I'm just done with the podcast. I want the podcast to be like a manageable amount of time. Like I think an hour is a good amount of time to have to do this podcast. But we have, like, when we've uploaded 2-hour podcasts, we've been getting decent numbers of downloads. I just haven't been as consistent with that as I want to be in terms of gigging up. I'm just really there's so much that I get done in a given week that getting the that getting the podcast edited and uploaded is sometimes just like, oh, I got to do that. Oh, I've got 5 minutes right now. Oh, I should do that. I don't always get to it. I need to have a podcast editor that I could just send the stuff to, but I have not yet. I don't want to commit to something that's going to cost me a bunch of money because I'm still at the point where I'm trying to build a stable income for what I'm doing. Yeah. So anyway. I got you off Overwatch. I bought Overwatch like 6 months ago and I still haven't played it. Genosis, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Simply Beth, we are finally alone. Just you and me and all these other people. How many people were watching tonight? I did not see. 213 people watching right now. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I really do appreciate it. It's okay, Septian. There's still time. Thank you, Tech Time. I mean, this is my Studio B, which is a spare bedroom in the house. I need to work on the acoustics a little bit. It's still a little bit boomy in here. I've got some acoustic stuff that I can bring from the other studio up here. Viper passed out. Someone call 911. Yeah, so it's, I'm glad it looks good. I mean, I feel like people really like the regular studio. I'm wearing gray tonight. Gray. I had a black hoodie on, but it's warm in here, so I took that off. Yeah, this is a Battlefield 1 t-shirt. Battlefield 1. Not nearly as good as Battlefield 4. But I still played the crap out of it. Yeah, so I'm mixing it up with a little bit of gray and orange this evening. I'm reading. I took it off. I took off the hoodie. It was too hot. Like, this room is relatively small, and it has 2 vents that pump heat up here, and it's like at the top of the house, so it gets really warm in here. Battlefield was the first-person shooter game that I could play that I really enjoyed. I couldn't. Call of Duty was not what I couldn't get into Call of Duty at all. I would play the stories in Call of Duty, but the multiplayer just always felt a little two-dimensional to me. Battlefield, there's so many different ways to play the game, so many different ways to approach different maps, etc., that it just kept me a lot more interested. Jose Zabo, I think if I took off the shirt, I would not get more views. I think I would get fewer views. I am like, 40-something guy with some serious dad bod going on, and I kind of want to get in shape, but I'm too lazy, or I'm working too hard, or something. I'm playing Battlefield 5 on the PS4 because that's the system that my friend Curtis has. And so that's what I'm playing Battlefield 4 on, or Battlefield 5. But I also have it on Xbox. I haven't played it on Xbox yet, and I think I'll eventually get it on PC just to try and get good at playing with mouse and keyboard. But I don't. It's such a learning curve. If you haven't done it since you were like 10 years old, it's such a crazy learning curve that it's very difficult to do. I own Red Dead Redemption, Shannon, but I haven't played it yet. By the time I get done with stuff at night, I'm just so brain dead. It's like watch some YouTube videos, read some, go to sleep. I find it really difficult to. I find it really difficult to go like get deep into a game, and I can't allow myself to play games when I could be doing other stuff during the day. So, eh, eh. Um, Francisco, thank you for the super chat. Keep up the great work. I really enjoy your opinions and perspective on today's technology. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. That's very cool. Very cool. Tech Rant asked earlier, Beatles songs for millennials. What do I think? Um, I read a few of them, and I thought they were pretty clever in a millennials kind of way. Uh, so it's yeah, it's fun. I haven't tried to come up with any though. Um, yeah, Hefe. Yeah, we definitely should. We definitely should do like some sort of round robin headphone review thing. Oh, look, Zach's alive. Uh, who is your favorite podcast host and why is it me? Soup is being delivered soon. Otherwise, I do. Well, I'm glad you're getting some soup, man. But the best. Okay, I'm gonna tell a story. I hope you guys are okay with that. Uh, this would have been like 1996. It was playoff football time, so it was January. My friend Jack, who used to run the record store that I used to hang at all the time, was visiting us in New York, and there was a blizzard, a huge blizzard, just dumped snow all over New York City. We were living on Avenue B, right between 12th and 13th Street, and the whole city was shut down. Literally, the snow was up to your thigh, up to my thighs. And so I we were stuck. We were watching NFL playoff football, and we were stuck. And one of the only places that was still delivering was a Chinese place up the street on Avenue A on 13th. And they were like a Chinese soup place. Soup was their thing, so Chinese soups. And so we would order these huge things of soup, and they would come in these plastic containers. And I got to tell you, I've never before or since had a better soup experience than being snowed in New York City eating Chinese soup. So, I never went to the soup Nazi. So, I did just have snow AV room. It's been. I had to shovel yesterday. I pulled something in my right in my rib. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Terrible. What else? Let me read. Going backwards. All right. I had a snow. I have a snowblower. It's an electric snowblower, and it's an electric snowblower, and I had it out and I was using it. It was doing great. I was clearing the way yesterday, and then I ran over the cable. And I'm going to have to spend some serious time like cutting the extension cord out of the snowblower before I can use it again. So then I had to start shoveling, and I hurt myself, which is why I need to go to the gym more often and not be such a lump of crap. Somebody asked earlier, what are my favorite books / games to play? Favorite books? I mean, I don't really I don't really have a favorite kind of book. I read a lot of science fiction from time to time. I've been reading mysteries. The last book that I wrote was a mystery, so I've been reading mysteries for a few years. Literary fiction is I studied fiction in grad school and learned how to write it. I guess that's what I did. And so yeah, literary fiction is kind of is kind of a thing, but sometimes it's just like white people being depressed, and it's not all that fun. Yeah. Travis, yeah, I know, man, I know. I haven't I haven't like trimmed my beard since before Vid Summit, and I figure I'm just gonna see what happens. It's kind of weird though. It goes through these phases where I'm like, oh, it's just it feels like I have an animal on my face. It's very uncomfortable. It's like wearing a scarf all the time. No shave November. Yeah, I guess it has been no shave for November for me, without really thinking I was going to do anything like that. Isn't it? Did they still do the Movember, like the mustache thing for November, or am I thinking of something else? Is Joe Hill a better writer than his dad? No, he is not. No, he is not. He is a good writer. I have not enjoyed his books as much as I enjoy Stephen King. Stephen King will go down in history like 200 years from now. Stephen King will be one of the writers that that is still talked about. He doesn't get enough credit for how good a writer he is and what he does. Now, I would have at one point never said anything like that because I was a snotty wannabe writer who hadn't achieved anything. But I recognize Stephen King for the goodness that he brings into the world. Let's see. Favorite book of Stephen King's? The first Stephen King book that I read was Salem's Lot. I was probably like 12 or 13 years old. And holy crap, that book scared the shit out of me. Just literally scared the shit out of me. I was so freaked out by that book. I had a bedroom in the basement of my house, and I was down there all alone, and it was like sort of dank and dark, and that book scared the crap out of me. So I guess that is my de facto favorite. I've really been enjoying like the mysteries that he's written recently. But The Stand. I remember the first time I read The Stand. Oh my God. And that book was intense. A little overlong, perhaps, but super intense. And John Katzenbach. I don't know his stuff, or maybe I don't know his. I don't know any of the titles of his stuff. Maybe I've heard of the titles. Don't Trim the Beard Ever Again? I don't know. We'll have to see about that one. Yeah, it's the Stand movie was meh. My wife is a huge Stephen King fan, and she loved the Dark Tower series. I do love watching documentaries as well. I feel like I've run through all of the greatest documentaries, like true crime, etc., etc., and I'm always looking for more. Very hard to find. So let's see. Pet Cemetery. Yeah, Pet Cemetery was. I never read that book, but I did see the movie. Now there's a new movie coming out. Talk about something sensitive. Like what, Ethan? What would be sensitive that you'd like me to talk about? I did like the remake of It. My daughter loved it. She just couldn't watch it enough. Stephen King is not overrated. Yannick. Sorry, man. I can't agree with you on that. Wizards aren't allowed to trim their beards. Okay, so I guess I don't. I guess that's just how it's going to be. Yeah, I used to have a goatee. Like I used to just have like the mustache and this, and that was a look in the 90s and early 2000s, but it's not a look that I'm into now. Journeyman Films. I'll have to look that up. Um, this channel is great because it's so chill and yet productive at the same time. Other tech shows just throw information at you without talking about it or anything else interesting happening. I mean, thank you. Thank you. I try. I try. Tech for your needs. Wizard Squad. Wizard Squad in the house. Hashtag Wizard Squad. Yeah, I can talk for a long time about just about anything. So I did not know that Nile Rodgers produced the Moonlighting theme, but that makes sense to me. Yeah, I loved the original Escape from New York. That movie was so good and it was so good in so many bad ways that I just loved it. Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate it, man. Welcome to the club. Capturing the Freedmans was really interesting. I feel like I need to watch it again because I watched it once several years ago, and I feel like I want to see it again. My favorite all-time movie? Okay. I'm going to say that my number 2 all-time favorite movie is Blade Runner. My number 1 all-time favorite movie is a movie called Meet John Doe, directed by Frank Capra. And I loved that film. Still super awesome. Yeah, Steven Hillenburg, the guy who created SpongeBob, passed away today had ALS. That's a hard way to go. A guy that I knew from high school had ALS. And yeah, it's just a completely miserable, awful way to die. Sharknado films. The Sharknado films were funny in a way. I assume that they were attempting to be. My daughter liked to watch them. My daughter, yes, Gary Cooper in Meet John Doe, absolutely. That is such a good movie, and I feel like if people watched it today, their minds would explode. Their minds would explode. Frank Capra was such a great director of films. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and of course, everybody's all-time favorite. Now I'm blanking on the name. What's the Christmas movie? I blanked on the name. God damn. My brain is just gone. Anyway, Tech for Your Needs. I'm sorry to hear about that, man. I have not seen that Netflix documentary. I'll try and look that up for sure. I have 4 different versions of Blade Runner. I got the box set Blu-ray that had like 4 different versions of it. It's a Wonderful Life. Thank you, Willis. Thank you. I don't know why I brain farted on that, but yeah. Vertigo, an amazing movie. Alfred Hitchcock always made amazing films. Like, I feel like kids don't watch classic movies these days. I feel like kids don't watch classic movies. And I feel really sad for the children of the world that they don't watch these classic movies. There's so much to watch, like YouTube and everything else, and 1,000 movies coming out every week and all that kind of stuff. Kids don't go back and watch classic movies. Like, I could never get my daughter to sit down and watch something like Citizen Kane with me, or any of those Frank Capra movies, and it breaks my heart. Like, there's something that you learn from watching those films that you don't learn from watching anything else. Yes, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a classic lesson in how to filibuster. I don't watch movie fights. I try not to get too much into. I watch too much YouTube, so I try not to veer off the path. I've been really enjoying The Walking Dead this season. So I've been watching. The Walking. A lot of Walking Dead commentary on the Walking Dead videos recently. Gone with the Wind, another great book, or another great. Well, it was a great book, also a great movie. Um, Epic Rap Battles of History was really cool. I love that. Kids say classic movies are boring. At least that is what my niece and nephew say. Yeah, I've heard some permutation of that. Um, and it really bothers me. When I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, I remember I would go and stay at my grandparents for like a couple of weeks in the summer, and they had a locally owned video store. And once you get through Footloose and whatever else, you got to start digging a little bit deeper into the catalog. And I remember just watching Gone with the Wind, like so many classic movies, and just really soaking it up. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. It's a shame. Maybe they'll watch the movies when they're older. Let's see. Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about, but you know, I won't ban you yet. Well, Tim, I think you're right. I think that kids don't sit down and watch the older movies because they don't have to. They don't have to. There's so much stuff to watch. Marilyn Monroe Smash, of course. Of course. The You're Tearing Me Apart thing with James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause, amazing. Little, little appreciated, not as remembered performance for James Dean, East of Eden, a John Steinbeck novel. First real, good book that I ever read. Love that book. Love that book. Haven't read it since. I should read it again. Yeah, Vinny, I think that Blazing Saddles might. I don't. Will it translate to kids of this generation? I'm not sure. Um, Some Like It Hot. Yeah, that was a great movie. Pillow Talk. Yes, also a great movie. Um, I know why the Caged Bird Sings. Yes, incredible book. Maya Angelou, incredible writer. Um, I don't know why Zach doesn't like Grease, Sam. That's really a blind spot for him, and I don't know what to do about it. It's kind of one of those things. If you don't recognize the genius that is Grease, just naturally, then I don't know if it can be taught. Now, Ethan, I wouldn't say that watching classic movies is staying buried in the past. It's you watch the evolution of an art form, and you get to know that art form in a more intimate way. But if you just start from one place and you don't know that history, you haven't experienced all that stuff, then you've got a very weak platform to stand on. So, um, yeah, Zach said he doesn't like Grease. I don't understand it, Genosis. I don't. Dirty Dancing is a movie that I don't like, but anytime I come across it on TV or anything like that, I will watch it for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why. But I will. Scent of a Woman I saw when it came out, but I haven't seen it since. How with 720? I don't. I can't tell any difference. Yeah, if when I had both phones, I put both phones up next to each other. God, I keep hitting this microphone. I put both phones up next to each other, and yes, I could see a difference between the two, but it wasn't like this screen was awful. It was just different. I don't feel like I've missed anything. It's not really 720p. It's not really 1080p, but on a screen that size, I don't think that I don't think it really matters. I can't believe that I'm saying that, because I certainly thought that before the phone came out. But now that I've seen and used the phone, I can't really fault it. Well, okay, Ethan, I see what you're saying. Like, you can't stay in the past. You got to move forward. Um, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I put my phone in the toilet on purpose to take a photo for to take a photo for that iPhone sales video. I cleaned it first. So, I just didn't walk in the bathroom and drop it in there. But I can confirm the water resistance factor for the 10s or the 10R. Yeah. Um, so in terms of the S9 versus waiting for the S10, I mean, if you think April is close, um, yeah, I don't know. If you need a phone, the S9 and the S9 Plus are super duper cheap right now, and they're as they got the same hardware, same specs, everything as all the rest of the phones out this year. So yeah, it wouldn't be a bad buy. The guitar's right here on the wall. Yeah, I wanted to get a shot that I hoped would be really evocative, and a clickable thumbnail with my phone in the toilet. I don't know if it was it as clickable as I thought it was. I don't know. I'm not much of a photographer. Yeah, the S9 Plus is very solid, Tim. You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. How are we doing here? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the iPhone 10. They're bringing it back. They're bringing it back. Why do I have a phantom pain about the OnePlus 3? I don't know. You mean you don't have it anymore, and you still feel the loss? Man, the V30 for $300 is a good deal. It is a good deal. I bought a V20 for I think like $250 last year. The only problem was when I got it, it must have been like a store model, because there was tons of screen burn in. I had to send it back. The Essential phone is a cool looking phone. It's kind of a drag that they won't be around to make a second one. At least it doesn't seem that way. So I'd still kind of like to get one just because. So Miyobi asks, who is winning the Super Bowl? My answer is, as always, the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is my answer. Nicholas, are you enjoying the 11-inch iPad? I'm liking mine. I haven't used it as much as I thought I would, but I'm still trying to work it in. No, Willis, thank you for the super chat. No problem, man. I'm enjoying the hang. I have not reviewed the Hydrogen 1 phone. It's too expensive and too gimmicky. I just don't feel like there's... I mean, the bigger guys like Mr. Mobile, Marquez, all those guys, they can review that phone and get tons and tons of views. I just don't know that for what it would cost me to get the phone, I don't know that it would be like worth the investment. I gave my essential phone to my girlfriend because my son threw up on her Samsung. What it wasn't? It wasn't water resistant from the vomit. The vomit, like I don't know. Uh yeah. Here we go, Steelers. Um, yeah. The iPad 11 inch is really pretty sweet. I'm reading. Well, Teresa, that's too bad. I mean, but I guess you got it fixed, and you're liking the phone, so no harm, no foul. I guess. Yeah, the iPhone 8 Plus is still, lots of people still love it. Hashtag Team Pixel. Yeah. Well, I used the Pixel for a little while. I didn't. The Pixel phones have always just felt half baked to me. They haven't figured out a way to make a fully baked phone yet. I don't know what that means, but um, just take a toothbrush and soap to it. Um, oh, the A7. Okay, so it was one of the lower tier models. I got you. I got you. Yeah, I hate this. I hate the Cowboys. Septian. Hate them. Have always. Who's quiet? I'm not quiet. Am I? I have done some laptop reviews, Jeffrey. It's one of those things again, like to get deep into laptop reviews. If you're not getting them from the manufacturers, like that's a deep hole to get into. And I've discovered that stores don't really appreciate you returning more than a few laptops in a short period of time. So bring back the Nexus. Yeah, that would be good. I don't think any of well, Huawei's still here, but like HTC. I guess they're still making phones. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard any iPhone 11 reviews. Has anybody else? Um, I haven't been looking for them either. Yeah, Snazzy Labs has he's Quinn's really taking it to him these days. I like it. I like it. Yeah. Um, Kyle, I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made that there's no way in hell um, that you have to change phones every year. I think people like to change phones every year, um, but not everybody. I know it's not it's not fiscally responsible to buy like a $900 or $1,000 phone every year, but unless it is what your business or something, which for me I guess it is. Um, LG made the best Nexus phones. I never got a hold of one of those. Thoughts on self driving cars? As long as it doesn't kill me or other people, I would love to be able to sit and read a book while driving someplace, driving someplace, watch some YouTube videos on my iPad, whatever. Um, the day is coming. It's really almost already here. So, Whisper. It sounds like maybe you do have a problem with phone buying. Yeah. Uh, yeah, Dapster. That's the thing. I think that I could use this 10R for the next 2 or 3 years and not really see any significant downgrade in my experience. Um, I think that would be the same case for everybody, but for phone manufacturers, especially Apple, they have groomed the buying public to want things that they don't need. Um, they just they get in. It's good for them to have a yearly cycle, and it's good for them to sort of train their customers to go through that yearly cycle. But it's not anywhere near necessary. It used to be, up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that the improvements made from year to year, like say from an Android especially, like the improvements made from year to year, really impacted the performance of the phone. And that's not the case anymore. Next year's phones are going to work just as well as this year's phones. Last year's phones work just as well as this year's phones, and will continue to be comparable for a long time. Um, Apple's made really good phones that'll last us. I mean, people are still out there using the 5S, um, and the 5S is still running iOS, getting updates, everything like that. That's one thing you can't say about Android phones, is that they don't have an update cycle with the kind of lifespan of an Apple device. But thank you, Israel. Sloth, I honestly, other than features in phones, I I don't really see a ton of difference in the pictures taken. Now, the cameras offer different features every year, and if those features matter to you, then maybe there's an argument for it. But the iPhone 8 camera is going to be fine. It's not one thing that people have to remember about using devices and using them to create art is that the tools are never the problem. The tools are what you have. It's your job to learn those tools well enough to transcend their shortcomings. So, yeah, iPhone 7 with max storage, yeah, there's no reason to go beyond that until the phone is not keeping up with you for some reason. Okay, Jiffer, what are your thoughts on Apple saying users can't sue them for owning a monopoly, taking 30%? I mean, yeah, so they take 30% of what the the developers what the developers make by offering the quote unquote retail space. Um, this is really tough because I don't. I am not in any way like a lawyer that knows these kinds of things, but to me, a monopoly is when there's no competition. Um, and it's hard for me to see that argument with the folks who are trying to sue Apple. Now, I haven't read enough and I don't know enough to really form an educated opinion, but just in what I have read, what I have seen, that's my first blush impression. That if Apple provides the venue for these, like, if you only have one farmer's market in your town, you're not going to sue the farmer's market for being the only place where you can go to buy fresh vegetables, right? That the new Galaxy folding phone, it's a curiosity at best. It's really not worth making, let alone worth buying. um, Yeah, I would. I mean, I wouldn't say no to any new phone if it was just being given to me, for sure. Um, 30% is not small potatoes. If it goes, I guess I see your point. Apple could charge whatever percentage they want, um, and that wouldn't, if there are no other alternatives for the people who are selling the apps to sell them to customers, then yeah, I mean that might be a little egregious. But again, it's a difficult thing to argue. Like, I mean, just because they could go up to 40% doesn't mean they will. So how do you litigate that? Apple is greedy. I mean, they're a company that wants to make money, and they do it pretty well. But the way that they do it is looking like it's not going to be sustainable forever. So, yeah, people are saying there's no competition within iOS itself, where in Android you can download Play Store, Amazon Store, etc., etc. It's funny because back in the early days, that was a selling point of the App Store. It was a walled garden, and Apple was very, very stringent with what they let in there and the quality of what it was. So, so basically, it was a win for the consumer. They knew they were getting a better product than they might be getting from from say the well, before it was the Play Store, whatever they call, I can't remember what they called it before the Play Store. But but yeah, I mean, it was the Wild West on Android. You could get some phone breaking stuff out there. So it used to be that was a plus for Apple. But now but now I guess the worm has turned, as they say. Um, it's weird though, because as somebody else said in the chat stream there, it is Apple's store. So if they take a cut of the profit for supplying the retail space, it's just really hard to it's really hard to say they don't have the right to do that. But again, I'm not a lawyer, not super familiar with this litigation, so I can't be like, really really educated on this. Um yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel that everything with smartphones these days has become so much more integrated that, like, the individual app, excuse me, is no longer as important as it used to be. But I don't know if that's just the way I feel. Yeah, the icon did literally look like a shopping bag. You're right. Battery technology needs a big jump. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be great to see like week-long battery life from smartphones. Um, and maybe with solid-state batteries, that's where we're going. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see what they come up with next. That's the next step in terms of the physical design of a phone that I think is there's still room to grow. Uh, so yeah, I see what you're saying, Willis. Like, I feel a lot more secure within the confines of Apple. I don't feel as I don't feel as insecure as I used to about Windows, or not Windows, but Android. Um, I used to be like, you know, what am I downloading? I don't even know. So Anyway, folks, it is now almost 10 o'clock. We've been chatting for an extra hour. I think I'm going to shut it down just so I can I can wind down before getting some rest. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. As always, you guys are awesome, and I do appreciate it so much. Going to be back next week, and I'm hoping that hopefully Zach will be well and will return with me. But honestly, you guys are awesome. It's been great to hang out with you. My name is Jason, as you know, and this is the Painfully Honest Tech podcast, the podcast so honest it hurts. And until the next time,